Hi folks, welcome back to Punk and Paisley. I am your host Chris, and today we're going to do a deep dive, a review of The Clash's most maligned album, their final album, Cut the Crap, which many people find to be an ironic title when they give it its typically harsh reviews. This makes many rock commentators, vinyl community people on YouTube's worst 10 lists. I don't think the album was that bad. However, this is probably one of the first 15 or 20 rock albums that I ever purchased in my misspent youth in the 80s. And The Clash are a band I absolutely adore. I had not given this album a full listen, first track to last track, in almost 40 years. So before commenting on it, I wanted to take some fresh ears to it and give it a listen, which I did today for the first time. Full listen, track by track in 40 years. Let's review and see if Cut the Crap is as bad as most reviews would have it. Now, what I'm going to do, because we like to, a lot of times people, when they do something subjective, we like to attach some numbers to it, and then we can pretend that we're doing science. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So work with me here, and we will pretend together that we are doing something that is not, in fact, entirely subjective, that we are, in fact, doing science. I might be able to get grant money for this. I'm also aware of the fact, by the way, that I have this sort of hostage situation, proof of life vibe going on in this room. Excuse the fact that we're fairly new in this house. We've been here less than a year. A lot of the unpacking is finally finished, especially if you own over 5,000 records that you transported across an ocean. Might take a little while to get things where they go. And also, these are stone walls with plaster over them. I'm not anchoring record shelves to these. So usually people are sitting with their wall of LPs behind them. I could do that. I'm not doing that. My LPs are spread out low and long in the living room, taking up entirely too much space, says my spousal unit. Many of you at home can sympathize, empathize. In any event, I'm going to go track by track through the 12 tracks on Cut the Crap in order. I'm going to rate them from 1 to 10. I'm then also going to, for a lucky 13th variable in the equation, we're also going to give an aesthetic. But for me, the album is a package, especially in the time in the 80s. It's pre-World Wide Web. For vast majority of people, pre-internet for all intents and purposes. Not too many people were doing the dial-up BBS thing. And you were buying the package. You were going to sit at home and listen to the record, and you were going to stare at the cover art, because that's what you had to do. You stared at the, when I was your age, kids, we used to walk uphill both ways to and from school in 63 feet of snow. And my shoes fell off and all that good stuff. So yeah, used to stare at the album cover, used to look at whatever inserts there were in it and the inside art. That's what you had to do. The album was an experience. So I'm going to do the 13th variable of that package of experience and also rate that from 1 to 10. And we're going to weigh those evenly and see what we come up with in a 1 to 10 score. Cut the Crap up against the wall and spread them. We're going to do the deep dive. Okay, track number 1, Cut the Crap, side 1, is Dictator. Dictator I find to be an interesting track. Now, I think it falls very much in with the themes of The Clash, headed back to the debut album, I'm So Bored with the USA. There's a reason that they have a triple album titled Sandinista, which is also in the chorus of Washington Bullets, and those songs, and the leader. There's a theme, a consistent theme carried through, including Dictator, the opening track of side one here, which is the post-World War II order of a whole lot of nasty, torturing, awful dictators propped up by the West, especially the U.S. and Britain, and how much that sucked. And our friend Joe Strummer, having grown up with his, I believe it was his dad in the Foreign Service of Britain, having had a lifelong interest in what we call world music as a result, and really feeling some sympathies and connections to the people of the developing world. Joe Strummer carries that thematic. He's nearly all that's left of the band here. We'll get to that in a moment, but he carries through those themes, and I think that Dictator fits in with the Clash aesthetic. Now we should also mention that these tracks are were produced by Jose Unidos and written by Strummer and Rhodes, Bernie Rhodes. Bernie Rhodes, it's hard to tell, sort of a low-rent Malcolm McLaren figure who claims to have been responsible for a lot of the aesthetic of the Clash, and perhaps was. It's a little hard to tell. It's a little hard to tell who's telling what percentage of truth in that whole situation. But he had the idea of them being these sort of proto-revolutionaries, some of what McLaren wanted to do, actually probably more with the New York Dolls than with the Pistols even. And this fits in with that aesthetic. I think this is consistent Clash. I like the radio, the shortwave radio. I'm a sucker for shortwave radio sounds and sound effects and that sort of audio. I don't mind that in the background at all. I do think I'm probably in the very small percentage of people who thinks that adds anything to the track. And there's a little too much going on. For some people, it would be too synthy, but I'm going to give it a 6. I give it a 6, and that means that we're at 6. One out of one track. We're at 6 for the average for the album so far. And we're above the 50% mark. We'll see where this is going. Track number 2, Dirty Punk. Track number 2 is Dirty Punk. I will say this too. Both tracks 1 and 2 on side 1, Dictator and Dirty Punk, are not as good as I'm remembering them in retrospect. There are certain songs that are not great where I remembered them as being not great, and then sometimes I hear them and I think, that's worse than I remember it. Sometimes that's more common than things being better than I remembered them. Probably the decades of music listening that I've had in the interim has helped place things in context for me. A great example of that effect, I call it the Convoy effect, because there was the massive CB radio-themed country song, Convoy, by a non-existent guy, studio musician who they slapped the name C.W. McCall on. And that was a massive, that was like a top 10 mainstream pop charts hit in the US. And I remembered that song being pretty bad, except for the CB parts. I'm a sucker for novelty injections into my pop music. So yeah, the first time that I heard Convoy in a few decades, a couple of years ago, I thought, my God, it's as bad as I remembered the track Convoy. It's worse than I remember it. And I have to say that there's a little bit of that effect with both Dictator and Dirty Punk, the top 2 tracks on here. I take Dirty Punk a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I think that Strummer may have been taking it a little bit tongue-in-cheek. God, I hope so. Because in the hands of, I'm going to pick on a band here, in the hands of the Exploited, let's say Waddy is doing Dirty Punk, he's taking that dead seriously. He's just, it's just, you know, yeah, I am a Dirty Punk. And I think there's a little tongue-in-cheek here, which makes it a better track. There's some wash of guitar here. extra point for I Want to Hear Your Mama Scream. It's not the worst track ever. It is not vintage Clash. The Clash is one of my favorite bands of all time, who recorded well over 100 really quality songs, which how many acts can you say that about? Very few. One of my top 10 all-time groups. This is not in the top half of those songs. However, I'll give it a 5. I'll give it a 5. There's enough going on there, and some of that is just pure strummer charisma carrying some of that, because there's not a whole lot to the song. Track number 3 on side 1 is We Are the Clash. You will seldom in your life have a more ironically titled song than We Are the Clash, because these guys, ladies and gentlemen, are not the Clash. The band, you let your drummer go for drug problems. You have irreconcilable differences between Mick Jones and Joe Strummer, who are going their separate ways. This is the whole project reeks of contractual obligation album, kind of cash grab for the name of a band that did wonderful stuff over the 7 or 8 albums worth of largely wonderful material. You've got Joe Strummer and Paul Simonon still on bass, and those guys are part of the Clash. And then you've got a few other dudes. Vince White, Pete Howard, Nick Shepard. Yeah, you are not the Clash. Will the real Clash please stand up? We Are the Clash. There is a sing-along sort of football hooligan chant chorus, which is washing over a good deal of these songs, but in honesty is also on some earlier Clash material. It's not a disaster. It's not, to me, the track is still not a total disaster. There's a little bit there. I am still 101 times out of 100 taking this track over the entire catalog of Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band and his songs that are basically a beer commercial and a pickup truck commercial standing on each other's shoulders in a trench coat pretending to be a rock album. So I will give it a 5. I will give it a 5. Dirty Punk being a 5 brought us up to 5.5 on the average. We Are the Clash being a 5 drops us to 5 1/3 points on the Big 10-point scale. Things are not looking great so far. Track number 4 on Cut the Clash. May as well have called it that. Track number 4. Are You Red E or Are You Red Y? You could read that 2 ways. Interesting track. This one is actually better than I remember it. It's got a lot of Paul Hardcastle 19. It's got maybe a little touch of what in the future they're probably still in school at this point, but when Pop Will Eat Itself comes out, there's little bits of that in there. If Are You Ready or Are You Red Y were some unknown band that put out a 45 that didn't go anywhere and was discovered later, people might consider it to be kind of a lost little semi-gem. I don't think it's the worst track. I am not offended by all the synth and effects. The Clash was pushing things in the studio. A lot of what they were pushing was dub reggae in previous albums, and there was they were also influenced a lot. And when they were in New York, they were enamored of early hip hop. And I don't find this to be out of character for them. I think it's a fairly interesting track. I actually gave it a 7, which some of you may find to be a little bit too generous. And that brings us up to a 5.75. We're tilting the needle into the green zone there. Tilting the needle just over the completely, totally average thus far with track 4. Track number 5 is Cool Under Heat. Interesting. Cool Under Heat. Where's that guitar from? Cool Under Heat sounds like the production is a little bit like that second album, Give 'Em Enough Rope, which a lot of people, here's my worn copy with the ring wear. Give 'Em Enough Rope, a lot of people said had kind of metal production. They didn't like that after the total garage production of the first album. Where's that guitar from that's starting the track on track 5, Cool Under Heat, a song that I didn't even remember that well. Starts interestingly. Like, where's this? Where are you going, Clash? Is it Clash goes AC/DC? Is it Clash goes Sabbath? Is it Clash goes Cheap Trick? Where are we going with this? And it turns out we're not going to a wonderful place, because the promise of that opening guitar is not really fulfilled. We have the same problem over and over again with so many of the tracks on here. We have weak, in many cases for the worst tracks, weak, generic, ill-thought-out percussion, sort of a wash of everything. Production, so not great 80s production. Not dynamic songwriting in a lot of cases, and some things that could have been better. I think I wrote in my notes that, you know, with a little more work and a different edit, perhaps, Cool Under Heat, it had potential. Had more potential. I gave it a 6. Look where we are at after track number 5. We're at 5.8, pushing the needle a little toward the correct end of the bell curve of average. So, you know, not the worst thing in the world. Track number 6, filling out the side, Movers and Shakers. Just kind of a weak track. I have to say, so much of this album sounds so much alike that at this point, even though it's just a couple of hours ago that I listened to the darn thing, I'm not even remembering a lot about Movers and Shakers other than the fact that I rated it a 3. And that is bringing us down to 5 1/3 points once again. And that's the end of side 1. Now, I will also say, probably because of the way that I would listen to portions of this album, starting in the 80s, especially when it was one of only about 20 records in my record collection. I started with side 2, and I misremembered side 2 actually being side 1 until I pulled the record out this morning. And that is, This Is England. All right, I'm going to say something highly controversial right now. This Is England is a damn fine track. This Is England is the gem of this album. This Is England is the reason to own this album. I think it is a wonderful meld of different styles that the Clash were working in, or at least Drummer at this point was working in. And there is that world-weary guitar figure that you've got. You've got an English child sampled voice, which for the life of me is unintelligible. As an American, I can tell you unintelligible, which perhaps for those of you who understand what the child is saying, if you are in England and of course you speak English incorrectly, friend's joke, then maybe it detracts. Maybe it's adding something to the track that I can't understand what the child is saying. He's making little English sounds with his little mouth. The child sounds like an American, or more likely Canadian, SNL comedian doing some skit where I'm a little English lad, rather more than an actual child using their normal voice, which is, I believe, what was sampled. But you've got that. You've got some of the more interesting rhythm on a track. Thank goodness for a change on this album. And I think it all works wonderfully. I think the lyric is great. It's very much, it's an evisceration of Thatcherism. Say that sentence 5 times fast. It's a wonderful track. I would say it's one of the top 25 tracks recorded under the moniker The Clash. That is not going to make me a whole lot of friends. I think maybe the comment section is going to blow up. but I think it's absolutely wonderful, and it inspired a movie. Well, at least not the movie, but it inspired the title of a movie, I believe, which is well worth seeing. The movie This Is England. I didn't grow up in England, but it certainly reminds me of some of the cliques and movements and aesthetic that those of us who are into punk and alternative musics actually were wearing and experiencing as tweens and teens in the 80s. So there's a little unsolicited movie review. See the movie if you've not. And This Is England, just a wonderful track. I actually gave it a 10. I don't give it, I'm not an easy 10. I'm not an easy 10. But it's just it is a wonderful, wonderful track. And that brings us up to a solid 6. We're up to 6 as an average for the album. This is beginning to look like an above average album, you know, says science and math. Track number 2, 3-Card Trick. If 3-Card Trick weren't a Clash track, people would just say it's an interesting little pastiche of some quasi-Latin dance rhythm and some other things going on. I initially was giving 3-Card Trick a 5, and then I actually downgraded it as I listened to more of the album because I realized that I'm getting listener fatigue. I'm getting listener fatigue from the sameness of these tracks, and I rated it a 4. The reason that I rated a 4 as opposed to some of it has a little more going for it than some of the other very similar tracks on this side. After This Is England, there's a considerable drop-off on side 2 of this thing. The 4 brings us back down to a 5.75 rating in total for the album. Things are beginning to look a little dim. But hey, what's happening with track number 3 on side 2? Play to Win. Play to Win starts with a lot of pinball sounds and arcade sounds and has a little bit going for it. Play to Win, once again, you remove it from the album, you remove it from its context. If I heard Play to Win by itself, if I had something on shuffle and Play to Win came up on its own, I'm trying to listen to these tracks that way before we take the album as a whole, its aesthetic, and give that a number. But Play to Win on its own, I actually gave a 6. And a lot of that has to do with, I didn't mind the experimentation. I did not mind the sampling. It helps, if anything. I don't think it's the worst track. I gave it a 6. And that actually brings us up very, very slightly to almost a 5.8 after track 3. And then things really take a dive. Tracks 4 and 5, Finger Poppin'. I already don't like Finger Poppin' from the title. Ugh, there's no way. Sometimes you hear a track title and you think that you've boxed yourself in there. That is highly unlikely. I mean, maybe if it's 1937 and you are, I don't know, some white singer who took a trip up to Harlem and listened to some cool music and brought it back to the studio and said, "Hey, we're going to do a track called Finger Poppin'." Maybe there'd be some hope for you then. But in 1985, Finger Poppin' is not going to be good news. It's there. It sounds a lot like the other material on the album. I gave it a charitable 3, and that takes us down to a 5.5 for the album. By the time we get to the 5th track on side 2, which is North and South, I think it's an even weaker track. I think it is. The fact that you're kind of slapped with Finger Poppin' and then you're backhanded by North and South, maybe it's the recoil from the previous track that made me give North and South a 2. all of a sudden we're starting to think about reaching for the Bob Seger album. Yeah, so, and that brings us down to a 5.18. We're doing significant digits here. This might be the only music channel in the genre here on YouTube that we do significant digits. Yeah, north and south is a 2, and that brings us down to a 5.18. We are just barely, we're just nose a little above water here, or from Philadelphia, so water, nose above water. And finally, the last track, number 6, Life is Wild, doesn't have much going for it. It doesn't have the same exact arrangement as about 3 other tracks on the side. At least it has that going for it, but it's a weak song all the way around. I gave it a 2. And that brings us, that dips us below. For the first time, we are below 5. We're on the wrong end of the bell curve at a 4.9. Okay, so we're hanging out at 4.9 there, and then we have to talk about the album as a package. The aesthetics, thematic things, any little extras here. Do I have, is it an Alice Cooper album? Is it in a cardboard box? Do I get underpants? Do I get a little ELO fold-out spaceship? Do I get this? This is what the Clash, by 1985, your actual capital P punk consumer. I grabbed Crass's Penis Envy here to give you an idea of what you're getting used to in the 80s. And this was a few years earlier, where we've got a full-size poster. We have art. We have lyrics. Crass isn't exactly working with the world's largest budget. We have an incredible, the incredible Crass Records label, iconic art, and then you've got the CBS corporate epic corporate take on same for the masses in color. I do like the Travis Bickle. As we know from previous Clash, Travis Bickle is on point for their aesthetic. I do genuinely like the art. I like the back cover photo of these guys, of the 2 guys from the Clash and the 3 strangers who I guess were playing cards with them. It's two guys from the Clash are waiting for the rest of the band, and then there are 3 guys. Maybe they're from the opening band. Oh no, wait, that's the Clash now for a month. Yeah, so not the worst package. I remember you get the lyrics to 3 songs. We're really phoning it in here. Same photo again in black and white. Thematically, if anything, the album has too much sameness. The album, there's a lot of problems with the rhythm on a lot of these. Seems like what they put in as a placeholder, where it's like, to keep time with the drums, and then we'll figure out something more dynamic later, and later never came. There was no more later. I retroactively misremembered because it had probably been at least, 20 years since I had even pulled it out to give This Is England a spin on vinyl. And I remember this little paragraph, the Clash communique. The Clash communique from October of '85, which is some very empty Bono level, Dear Bongo, no. Very empty Bono level, meaningless messaging. I remember this being maybe the whole side of the inner sleeve, and it's not. It's weak. It's pathetic. By 1985, look at what you're getting from actual more political DIY bands, and then you get this little this little completely hypocritical cut the crap and get out there. I mean, you guys couldn't be bothered at this point to work on a whole album, let alone, supporting the Sandinista revolution in Nicaragua. So, man, what are we left with? I gave the whole aesthetic package. I'm somewhat grading on the major label curve here as well, and I gave it a 4 for a 13th point, which brings us way down to a 4.85 for the album. Cut the Crap is on the low end of the bell curve, we're gonna say. The title also just made it too easy for the critics. Sometimes you're just helping people out a little too much. Yeah, but I will still say the weakest album by a great band. The weakest album by a great band that looks smaller in comparison to their best material, and one which, because of its experimentation, because of the pure charisma and sense of goodwill that I just credit to Joe Strummer, still better than I will take it over Bob Seger. I will take it over Elton John and Billy Joel. I will take it over Bruce Springsteen. I could go on and on. We have all day if you want me to list who I would take this album over. So the weakest album, yes, by an incredibly strong band. If you find it in a bargain bin, by the way, I paid I'm looking at the original price tag at what was the best record store in Philadelphia. I paid $6.98 for this, plus applicable sales tax, which was 6% in the 80s, for this album used, and it was only about a year old, maybe a year old when I picked this up. So, and this is, I have a lot of records that I picked up that are better albums than this. At the same time from the same record store, where I paid $3.98, $5, somewhere in there. So there was still enough demand for this in 1986, probably, when I bought this, that they pushed the price up to near $7, which at the time meant that there was still some demand for this in the shop. Who's to say? Well, anyway, that's more than enough that anybody should ever have to say about Cut the Crap. And I hope that you enjoyed the video. You like it, you subscribe. If you'd like to share your opinions in the comments, I'd love to hear them. If you'd like me to do this kind of dive on other albums, let me know. This is Chris from Punk and Paisley, reminding you folks to keep on rocking in the unfree world.